Crockett said she strongly consider a Senate run. U.S. Weekly reports she leads early polls to challenge GOP Senator John Cornyn, but she's waiting on a court ruling over redistricting that could reshape her district. And Delaware State University trustee Tetra Shockley Esquire will participate in the Miss USA 2025 pageant. Not only will she represent DSU, but she'll proudly represent all HBCUs. The special event takes place on Friday. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's the World Series. These players live forever. Watch baseball at its finest. The World Series, presented by Capital One. Major League Baseball, trademarks and inclusion.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
2 days into the NBA regular season, the league is finding out that they may have a very serious problem with illegal gambling. When FBI Director Kash Patel speaks at a press conference, telling reporters that numerous people connected to the NBA are facing felony and racketeering charges, something is up. Patel announced Thursday morning that more than 30 people across the country have been arrested by the FBI after a year-long investigation. Among the arrests, Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups and former NBA player and assistant coach Damon Jones. According to reports, one of the accusations against Jones is that he provided information to gamblers on LeBron James's injury status during the 2023-24 season. Jones allegedly tipped off people that LeBron would not be playing in certain games before he was listed on the Lakers pregame injury report. Much more to come on this situation. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
You ready?
You're invited to the KBLA Talk 1580 Community Health and Wellness Fair on Saturday, November 8th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Catch at Audubon Middle School in Leimert Park, 4120 11th Avenue. Join us for a day of health, healing, and community connection. There will be health screenings, immunizations, wellness information, a Catch Charter School recruitment fair, plus music and healthy snacks. And it's all free at the KBLA Talk 1580 Community Health and Wellness Fair, Saturday, November 8th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Audubon Middle School in Leimert Park, 4120 11th Avenue. Come out and bring the entire family. And if you have not yet checked out our KBLA Health and Wellness Hub, you should at KBLA1580.com. KBLA Talk 1580 thanks Catch Charter School, Prudential, Eastside, Cedar Sinai, and St. John's Community Health. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that a healthy community is a thriving community.
That's right, baby.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. In this hour, we're doing a switcheroo. Dr. Johnny Mack is joining us in the first hour, principal and managing partner of the Johnny Mack Group and the founding director of the World House Project. He is a social entrepreneur and scholar practitioner with expertise in subject areas of peace, conflict, and social change and movements. He has traveled extensively throughout the Americas, Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, working in the fields of peace, development, conflict, and nonviolent social change. Dr. Mack's seminal work, After Confrontation, Then What?, challenges the logic of nonviolent social change theory and practice. Particularly, he rearticulates nonviolence beyond the traditional understanding of nonviolent struggle as principally nonviolent resistance. Dr. Mack's research includes extensive study of Martin Luther King Jr.'s logic of nonviolence and the U.S. civil rights movement. He explicates Dr. King's logic of nonviolence using King's call to restructure the social edifice and particularly its triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism with a revolution of values that is effected through peaceable power. Dr. Mack, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, and more specifically, your show, The World House, with Dr. Johnny Mack.
Hey, Jesse, I'm so delighted to be here and grateful for the hour you give me for this discussion.
Dr. Mack, I am so honored and privileged to have you as our guest. As you probably well know, our most intensive show of the week always ends in the World House. And in the last week or so, there's been a significant change in the World House, maybe in the annals of human history. 7 million people gathered in 2,600 different locations around the United States, but not just around the United States, in Europe, in Africa, in South America, in Asia, all around the world, in a protest, a resistance to the idea of kings and tyranny. In this hour, in this moment, I often think about the question raised by 19th century theologian Charles Spurgeon when asked the question about the relevance of Christianity. He said, we might just want to hang these two questions up in our house. What would Jesus do, and how would he do it? And I think those two questions are probably appropriate in the modern era. In light of your work and study, what would Dr. King do, and how would he do it? Certainly the 250,000 people who gathered on the Mall on August 28th, 1963, Dr. King proclaimed in that speech that it was the largest march in American history for people who are demanding freedom. There are multiples associated with that same action that took place on No King's Day. What would our king, Martin Luther King Jr., what would he say about what we saw?
Yeah. Well, he'd have obviously, Jesse, a lot to say that goes without saying. But Jesse, he would also have done much more, frankly, than we have done. I think one of the things King would say, if he were the Rip Van Winkle, who, perhaps had been asleep for 60 plus years and suddenly woke up to today's realities, he would be alarmed in so many different ways, including that we have not made the progress that he anticipated. And I think, Jesse, he would be alarmed that the movement itself did not heed his admonition that we study more carefully our understanding of what nonviolence is, what nonviolent social change is, and how we affect that nonviolent social change. And I think King, Jesse, would say, I told you so. I told you that if you did not spend the time, if you had not spent the last 50 years not studying and practicing what nonviolence offers, then you would not be where we are today, Jesse. And so I think he would be not only disappointed in what has happened, but what we have failed to do to prevent what we are now experiencing and finding ourselves now in these No King protests.
I looked out upon the crowds of the No Kings protest, and I saw a broad diversity of Americans who, as you have suggested, woke up suddenly to the reality of everything that they had gained over time, and that were being stripped away from them in real time. Even the symbolism of what it meant to build a more perfect union, to build a world housed amongst all Americans. The symbolism, for example, of even the destruction without authority, congressional authority or preservation authority of the White House itself. And it's clear. Dr. Todd Yeary said yesterday he believes that underneath the ballroom, the President of the United States is probably building some kind of bunker with some kind of expectation that he indeed may, in fact, not leave the presidency in 2028. And so to the warning that you've given us, and certainly to the alarm set by Dr. King, have we misrepresented or misunderstood entirely just how far to the right this thing can go?
Jesse, indeed, it's a great question. And I think the answer to your question is absolutely, we missed it. I think we discussed this a week or two ago, that those on the right, or however you want to characterize that particular ideology, and the movement that they represent, and those words are specifically and carefully chosen, there are at least two movements in place right now. It is the movement that has brought us to where we are today, and the reordering of the social edifice, which we also talked about over the last couple of weeks. And the reason, Jesse, I keep coming back to it is we have to wake up. We are the ones sleeping through a great revolution. We, those of us who are against and find and are aghast, if I can use that word, at where we are today, the changes that are taking place. We have slept through a revolution, and now we find that change upon us, and we wonder what we can possibly do about it. And so we have significant work to do, Jesse.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We're going to have an in-depth conversation on what we've experienced in the last week or so with Dr. Johnny Mack when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
On Thursday evening, November 6th, you're invited to the next KBLA Talk 1580 Altadena Town Hall meeting. This time, we're convening at Victory Bible Church, 1497 North Hill Avenue in Pasadena. The town hall will once again be broadcast live on KBLA Talk 1580 from 4 to 6 p.m. on Thursday, November 6th. But you're invited to join us in person for this urgent and necessary community conversation. The theme for this Altadena Eaton Canyon Fire Town Hall is Understanding the Wildfire Recovery Compensation Fund. The primary focus of this gathering is to inform residents about Southern California Edison's newly launched Wildfire Recovery Compensation Program and provide clarity on eligibility and the claims process. There are plenty of questions to be asked, and only KBLA Talk 1580 has the right moderators to ask the tough questions, the right stakeholders and community activists to share their insights, and we have confirmed the participation of corporate executives from Southern California Edison to answer our queries. So be sure to join us at Victory Bible Church in Pasadena, 1497 North Hill Avenue on Thursday, November 6th. The event is free and open to the public, but registration is required at KBLA1580.com. That's KBLA1580.com. Light refreshments will be served immediately following the live town hall. This KBLA Talk 1580 Altadena Rising Town Hall is brought to you by Quinn Emanuel Trial Lawyers and the Black Freedom Fund.
Life moves fast. That's why California makes voting easy. You don't have to wait until Election Day. Drop your ballot at a secure drop box, visit an early vote center, or mail it. Over 80% of Californians vote early, and you can too. Plus, when you sign up for Where's My Ballot, you'll get a text or email the moment your ballot is received and counted. Don't delay, vote today. Get more information at sos.ca.gov. A message from the California Secretary of State.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. We're listening to The World House with Dr. Johnny Mack. We're talking about, in part, the triple evils, most commonly refers to racism, poverty or economic exploitation, and militarism, a phrase that was coined by Martin Luther King Jr. And Johnny, in this moment, I'm thinking that for the first time, the new budget of the United States has now crossed $1 trillion in military spending. We are certainly looking at a resurgence of white supremacy and racism, the elimination of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at every phase of American life, both in the public sector and the private sector, and even the threat of the idea that somehow when Black women or brown women or women of color get hired, they are somehow, including a Supreme Court justice, the diversity, equity, and inclusion member of the court. By the way, no such reference for Clarence Thomas because of his ideology. And we're also looking at an economic disaster that is impacting both rural and urban areas in the United States. It's almost as if, and I've argued earlier in the week, that the tariffs themselves are not really designed to improve the American economy. The tariffs themselves have created great hardship in rural areas, farmers who cannot get their products to market, soybeans, corn, lettuce, the absence of workers in those particular spheres. And now the talk of, if the government remains closed, nearly 43 million Americans could lose their food stamps, their health benefits. It just seems that in the three categories that Dr. King told us to look at, pay close attention to, and to do something about it, the three indices in those areas are at an all-time high.
Yeah. And Jesse, we were just talking about, the No Kings rallies that we've just experienced. And you asked the question about what Dr. King might say and what he might do. The point you just made, I think King would say that we have a problem that has depth and breadth. And so the breadth of it is about racism and privilege, where the social structures and systems and policies and processes, the command and control of the current administration that fosters this privilege and its continuation is only part of the problem. And it camouflages or hides the breadth or the depth of the problem. And the depth of the problem, remember the point here is, King would say the problem is both depth and breadth. The breadth being, the racism, the poverty, etc. The racism and the bigotry. But the depth, Jesse, has to do with privilege. It has to do with the haves and the have-nots. Many have made the point that the No Kings rally is bereft of or lacks many Black and brown faces and participation. Why is that? What is that about? I think it speaks to the depth of the problem in terms of privilege, those who have and those who don't. And so there's a real dynamic here, a very complicated set of issues that we have to address in terms of that depth and breadth of the problem. I hope I've made sense here, Jesse.
You absolutely have. In fact, you're so on point. We have a clip now that our producer wants to play.
Today, organizers say at least 7 million Americans took to the streets protesting what many called an abuse of power by President Trump. House Speaker Mike Johnson called it, quote, the Hate America rally. Here in New York City, police say 100,000 people turned out at multiple marches. They report no arrests. There were more than 2,600 events from coast to coast. They are all part of the No Kings movement, which accuses the president of behaving more like a monarch than an elected official. CBS's Elise Preston in Los Angeles leads us off tonight. Elise.
Jerika, thousands have turned up here in downtown Los Angeles to express their fear and frustration with the administration. Their message, no monarchs in America.
I want to be able to tell my future children that I was here, that I stood on the right side of history.
The nationwide rallies are in response to what organizers call an abuse of power by President Trump, including his administration's crackdown on immigration and its threat to send the National Guard into cities, including Chicago and Portland.
The message is no kings. The message is the Constitution of the United States is a wonderful document that matters.
Republicans said the protests were nothing more than Hate America rallies.
I'm Torian Small in Washington, D.C. Before leaving the Hill this week, House Speaker Mike Johnson framed this rally as a Hate America event. Attendees disagreed.
We love America. We hate what they're trying to do to America.
Today's rally is taking place in big cities and small towns in every state.
I'm Allie Bauman in Morristown, New Jersey. Thousands attended today's rally 16 miles away from the president's New Jersey golf course. This county has deep roots in the nation's founding, known as the military capital of the American Revolution.
Our forefathers fought off kings and said no kings for the first time. So it is full circle.
Judy Kelly is one of the local organizers.
To defend democracy on this land, it does mean a lot to all of us who are working on it.
In Frisco, Texas, the protest was small but vocal.
I believe in democracy. I fought for democracy and sacrificed. And the things that are being done right now in this government are totally ridiculous.
In Europe, protesters were also small in numbers, but passionate outside the U.S. Embassy in London, in Paris and Berlin.
Being here in Germany, especially considering the history that's here, we have a unique perspective to look and say, that's not okay.
Ahead of today's protest, the governors of Virginia and Texas brought in the National Guard to handle any potential unrest in their state. Jerika, those protests have been largely peaceful. Same scene here in Los Angeles.
All right, Elise Preston reporting from Los Angeles tonight. Thank you.
Johnny, I want to come to this point that you raised just before we played that clip, and that was the question of the absence of Black and brown faces in the No Kings movement. And I might add that the struggle against tyranny, which all of us support, we're all in heart, spirit, or even in body, part of the No Kings movement, certainly tyranny is a real threat to the republic and a threat to the idea of democracy. But it wasn't a reduction in military spending rally. It wasn't a reduction in racial animus rally. It was not a reduction in economic disparities rally. And so to Dr. King's, to the heart of the messaging is the spiritual commitment against these triple evils, which somehow in the course of this protest were not a factor in the end of monarchy. And I say that specifically because we can have a authoritarian Democrat, or under the present structure, we can have the idea of tyranny present itself in the form of our leftist politics. It's not the same as the values of revolution that Martin Luther King Jr. was talking about. This is definitely a revolution of sorts, but it's not what we're talking about.
Jesse, you're just too smart for me. Again, you ask the right questions and you frame it so well. Yes, poverty, racism, and militarism certainly speaks to, I think, the time at which King led a movement in the mid-20th century. It was a time when African Americans were fighting what I like to call, many of us call, American apartheid. And so he spoke specifically and directly to that time. Remember, Jesse, I know you know this, that King used nonviolent principles and values that he learned from Mohandas K. Gandhi. And we made the point in previous discussions that he took those principles and values and that concept and he rearticulated it for his time, for that time, for the mid-20th century, and that specific movement of overthrowing American apartheid. The challenge for us today, and specifically to your point now, Jesse, is we must rearticulate in the same way King did, though that concept for this time. And so when we look at poverty, racism, and militarism, the specific values that King wanted to address and their root are cupidity or greed for poverty. For militarism, that root is rivalry, violent rivalry. And then for racism, that root is bigotry. King wanted to replace those values of bigotry, rivalry, and cupidity or greed with something else. I'm almost there, Jesse. That something else are three virtues or values of liberty, a community, and liberty, community. What's my third one, Jesse? It'll come to me in a moment. King was trying. Pardon me.
I while we regather that thought, let me just say that. Let me tell you what I feel was absent. I mean, I didn't see the farmer who's struggling. I would have loved to have seen John Deere's tractors and some, quite frankly, maybe not welcomed, but some red hats with maybe a big X on the front, kind of crossing out. You know, we were doing just fine before we started down this road. I'd like to see some room for repentance and redemption, because in the final analysis, when you talk about community, Johnny, it seems to me that, you know, there has to be an outreach. In the clip that was played, I heard the messaging from the other side calling it a hate America rally. You know, there was a meme posted by the President of the United States flying a F-15 fighter over a large crowd of No King participants and defecating on them, as if that was something the other side wanted to hear. And so on this question of values, in the final analysis, maybe even before the logic of Gandhi, we're also talking about the precepts and the principles of Jesus of Nazareth, that any society that is built, that is civilized, is going to have to take into account the love of the other, love of someone who has a different point of view than we do, someone else's need, the absence of bread on someone else's table, not just the absence of bread on our own, the quality of life that they live and the quality of our lives are inextricably bound by this garment of mutuality and destiny.
Yeah. So Jesse, it speaks directly to the word that I just couldn't pull, and that is human dignity. Three values that King wanted to, or King fostered in lieu of, instead of this poverty, racism, and militarism, or bigotry, rivalry, and greed or cupidity, was, again, liberty, community, and dignity. So Jesus of Nazareth viewed all humanity as having equal dignity and worth. We were all created in the image of God, and we bear that image. We share that commonality in our human dignity and worth. And so that's what brings us together. That is what is the inextricable mutuality that connects us all in one humanity. And there is where we find common space and common place. While we may vote our specific interests, we may protest those things that affect our lived experience. Your lived experience, Jesse, and mine may be different, but we can find common ground in our dignity as we support each other in seeking to exercise our liberties to realize our full potential.
You know, Johnny, I'm thinking in this moment that it is almost impossible to view the history of the world before Jesus of Nazareth. He's just the dividing line, BC, AD. Almost everything that we know to be civilized, we stop at his life. We just don't go back to Egypt. We just don't go back to Rome. We start with Jesus forward, right? It's like that is the experiment that divided time and space on the idea of civilization. Whatever we become 2,025 years later, after the crucifixion and the resurrection, it's because we're struggling with these principles. And yes, there's a dividing line with Gandhi, who in his experiment is showing us how to conduct resistance in a certain context. And I could argue easily that there's a dividing line that is established by Martin Luther King Jr. that is almost impossible to look beyond. Before Dr. King, it's hard to imagine the world that we lived in without his life. And so everything that we are in the present in large measure is because we are towards something. And I might add that the history of unfreedom in the world is far longer than the history of liberty, emancipation, and freedom that we presently enjoy. More when we come forward with Johnny Mack on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
The biggest names, the best conversations. You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. The man accused of threatening Black House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is in court today. Jeffries is responding.
We've seen crimes committed by people who Donald Trump pardoned on the first day he was sworn into office.
Chris Moynihan, who served time for the January 6th riot, allegedly texted plans to target Jeffries. Opening statements began in the trial of former Illinois deputy Sean Grayson, accused of murdering 36-year-old Sonia Massey, a Black woman shot in her kitchen after calling 911 about a prowler. Prosecutors say the shooting was unjustified. Grayson claimed he feared she'd throw boiling water at him. And Pharrell Williams is set to perform before Game 1 of the World Series between the Dodgers and Blue Jays. Joined by gospel group Voices of Fire, he'll perform songs from his new album while they sing both national anthems. Game 1 is Friday night in Toronto at 8 p.m. Eastern. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's the World Series. These players live forever. Watch baseball at its finest. The World Series, presented by Capital One. Major League Baseball, trademarks and inclusion.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
2 days into the NBA regular season, the league is finding out that they may have a very serious problem with illegal gambling. When FBI Director Kash Patel speaks at a press conference telling reporters that numerous people connected to the NBA are facing felony and racketeering charges, something is up. Patel announced Thursday morning that more than 30 people across the country have been arrested by the FBI after a year-long investigation. Among the arrests, Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups and former NBA player and assistant coach Damon Jones. According to reports, one of the accusations against Jones is that he provided information to gamblers on LeBron James's injury status during the 2023-24 season. Jones allegedly tipped off people that LeBron would not be playing in certain games before he was listed on the Lakers pregame injury report. Much more to come on this situation. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Tavis Smiley with a final word here about the upcoming Left Coast Forum on Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. As you know by now, our major keynoters include Professor Richard Wolff and Dr. Cornel West. LA Mayor Karen Bass will be there as well. But listen to some of these plenaries: fighting for Black students and educational equity, resilience under Trumpism, how to stay sane under fascism, the battle for democracy, what's at stake in 2026, healthcare under attack, fighting Trump's cuts, and building patient power from seed to system, building a local food economy in South LA, theater as a force for change, voices from Palestine. The Constitution is not self-reinforcing, racism on the left, building communities of care, federal changes and their impact on healthcare in LA County, Committee for the First Amendment, and more. The Left Coast Forum is brought to you by the LA Progressive, the Empowerment Congress, Community Coalition, Partnership for Growth LA, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, LA Care Health Plan, United Teachers Los Angeles, Black Progressive Action Coalition, St. John's Community Health, the National Lawyers Guild, the Weingart Foundation, and more. Space is limited, so if I were you, I'd register right now at KBLA1580.com. That's KBLA1580.com. Your voice matters. Your presence matters. We'll see you there.
Established in 2020 during a time of deep racial unrest across our state and country, the Black Freedom Fund was created to make sure that leaders and organizations working to support Black communities and build power have the resources they need to stay in the fight for the long haul. We believe that those closest to the issues impacting our communities know best how to solve them. That's why in just the last 5 years, we've granted more than $45 million to over 200 grassroots organizations across California. That is the largest collective investment in Black organizing in history, and we're just getting started. We are clear-eyed and committed, more now than ever, to our people, our power, and our possibility. Join us in creating a future where Black people harness their full power to shape their lives and realize a just world for all. Learn more at fundblackfreedom.org. That's fundblackfreedom.org. The Black Freedom Fund is proud to sponsor Conversation Live Altadena Rising with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580. The Black Hollywood Education and Resource Center proudly presents its 27th annual Real Black Men Short Film Showcase. Join us Saturday, October 25th at the Writers Guild Theater, 135 South Doheny Drive in Beverly Hills, California. The showcase will feature over 20 films by emerging Black male filmmakers from across the country, ready to let their stories be seen, voices be heard, and visions come to life. Saturday, October 25th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Tickets are on sale now on eventbrite.com. For more information, call 323-957-4656 or email bherc@bherc.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Dr. Mack argues that nonviolence is a metalogic with direct, structural, and cultural forms that counterpose John Galtung's seminal conflict of violence triangles. He constructs a counterpose of violence and nonviolence as alternative paths of change as articulated by Martin Luther King Jr. in 1967 book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? Dr. Mack, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, Jesse.
Dr. Mack, I'd like you to finish the point you were making before the break, but I want to transition to the idea of the economy at some point, because certainly Dr. King's logic occurred in an economic context. The country was growing. There was far more opportunities, or at least the perception of opportunities that were available to people, and knocking on the door of opportunity for communities that have been left behind. We're certainly in an economic context. And as we see these massive amounts of resources, including the corrupt resources that are being shifted without the consent of Congress, out extrajudicially, extra-congressionally, the fact that we're fighting over Medicaid, the fact that we're fighting over food stamps, the fact that we're fighting over health benefits are part of an economic context that allows the blame of the other. The immigrants are the problem. The blacks are the problem. The women are the problem. People who are getting into college who come from histories of discrimination are the problem. No one raised those kinds of arguments, at least I might have been too young to have heard them, in 1965, but it seemed that America was on a very different economic trajectory when Dr. King was also making these arguments.
Yeah. So economics obviously is always and ever present in any conflict regarding how society organizes itself and who benefits and who is burdened by our economic, political, and social systems. The divide between those who have and those who don't, Jesse, today as compared to the mid 20th century, 50, 60 years ago, is quite significant. I don't have the exact numbers. I'm not an economist, but I could certainly recall that the 1% of the 1% are really who are benefiting, who is really benefiting from what is happening in the world today. And it's in part what I meant by there's a depth and a breadth, a vertical and a horizontal issue here. Pitting those who have against pitting those who have not against each other, rather than understanding that the real challenge, the real conflict, the real fight is between those who accumulate and concentrate power and resources into the hands of the very few at the expense of the many, is really what we're faced with. And until and unless we understand that pitting those who don't have against each other camouflages the real challenge, the real conflict, the real fight, the real battle. And so we expend all of our energies and waste all of our time fighting each other while our opponents laugh all the way to the bank, as they say.
Johnny, let me say that I have my own issues with Joe Biden. And obviously I have my issues with Donald Trump. And I have issues with Obama and the presidents before him. But it just seems to me that the weaponization of some aspects of the economy and the weaponization of some tools that other presidents have had the power to use, apparently, that they can impose unilateral tariffs anywhere in the world when they want to without Congress. If this is an acceptable behavior, anyone can pull the strings of any social group in America to accomplish, how shall I say it, scapegoatism.
That's right.
To accomplish pitting people against each other without any regard for the very fabric of the world house that Dr. King was trying to build. Now, he said that the problems to the world house were these triple evils. But the triple evils and studying and hanging around, we need to know what they are, right? But we're trying to get to a world house. We're trying to get somewhere where the triple evils have been erased. And when they're behind us as a civilized society, we're able to commune in a space and live out our individual lives to our fullest, in a non-violent and in a loving way.
Yeah. So, therein is the challenge, Jesse. Again, while King was focused on the three evils, he certainly understood their root causes of greed. For example, when it comes to poverty, the root cause of poverty is greed. And it's not so much that King was focused solely on poverty. He was simply articulating the problem in a way that was relevant to his time. And we must do the same today. And so, it's this greed that creates not only the poverty that we experience in our own communities, but the same poverty and the lack of opportunity that our brothers and sisters in Appalachia experience, or in the Gulf Coast experience, or in Native American reservations experience. And as long as, or even our immigrant brothers and sisters who are simply looking for opportunity, as long as we can allow others to pit or to frame the problem as a battle amongst ourselves, those who don't have, then they win. And we've got to find ways to fully understand what really ails our society and develop strategies to overcome that, rather than the semantics that we find in the media that simply recharacterize and camouflage what the real problems that ail our society are.
Johnny, when we come forward, I hope I can turn our attention to the idea that we ought establish as a society a floor beneath which no human being can fall, where these precepts of human dignity are established, that they're locked into the Constitution, they're locked into the law in ways that they can't be changed ad hominem or ad will. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More when we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580 with Johnny Mack.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Donald Trump has all but declared war on California, sending in a National Guard, blocking disaster relief, and cutting funds to our colleges. And now, he and Texas Republicans are trying to rig the next election by stealing congressional seats from black voters in states like Texas.
They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides.
Seriously, look it up. But Prop 50 is how we fight back. It gives Californians the power to fight fire with fire and beat Trump at his own game. Prop 50 creates temporary emergency congressional maps that level the playing field and protect the power of black votes. Not just in California, but across the country. Your vote matters, and the whole country is counting on California to lead. So use your vote to protect our power, our history, and our future. Vote yes on Prop 50 by November 4th. Ad paid for by Yes on 50, the Election Rigging Response Act, Governor Newsom's Ballot Measure Committee, Ad Committee's top funders, HMP for Prop 50, and Fund for Policy Reform.
The Black Hollywood Education and Resource Center proudly presents its 27th annual Real Black Men Short Film Showcase. Join us Saturday, October 25th at the Writers Guild Theater, 135 South Doheny Drive in Beverly Hills, California. The showcase will feature over 20 films by emerging black male filmmakers from across the country, ready to let their stories be seen, voices be heard, and visions come to life. Saturday, October 25th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Tickets are on sale now on eventbrite.com. For more information, call 323-957-4656 or email bherc@bherc.org.
Life moves fast. That's why California makes voting easy. You don't have to wait until Election Day. Drop your ballot at a secure drop box, visit an early vote center, or mail it. Over 80% of Californians vote early, and you can too. Plus, when you sign up for Where's My Ballot, you'll get a text or email the moment your ballot is received and counted. Don't delay, vote today. Get more information at sos.ca.gov. A message from the California Secretary of State.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. Every girl deserves a chance to shine. That's the belief behind Forgiving for Living, Inc. Since 1999, this organization has been empowering at-risk girls ages 13 to 18, helping them overcome behavioral and mental health challenges. Founder Wendy Gladney's personal journey inspired the mission to give girls hope and purpose through the power of forgiveness. Through their ambassador program, workshops, and annual conference, Forgiving for Living has touched over 3,000 young lives, providing mentoring, life skills, training, and tools for building self-esteem and confidence. You can make a difference. Visit forgivingforliving.org to donate, volunteer, become a mentor, or find help for a young girl in need. Forgiving for Living, Inc., building brighter futures for young girls. Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Nearly 7 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's disease or AD. But did you know that Black adults aged 65 and older are twice as likely as white adults to develop AD? You may be able to reduce your risk by managing conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure, being physically active, eating healthy, and exercising your mind. To learn more about AD, the importance of early diagnosis and intervention, and a potential treatment option, visit treatalzearly.com. That's treatalzearly.com. This message is brought to you by AZI.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. This is the World House with Johnny Mack. Johnny Mack is probably one of our most thoughtful contributors, and he rounds up our week. And Johnny, just before I bring you forward on the question of where are we going from here, chaos or community, I just want to give a definition of the word ad hominem. Ad hominem as an adjective is an argument or reaction directed against a person rather than the position they are maintaining, like a vicious ad hominem attack. As an adverb, ad hominem means in a way that is directed against a person rather than the position they are maintaining. For example, these points come from some of our best information sources who realize they'll be attacked ad hominem for fighting for a world house or fighting for common unity or community. Johnny, we have a choice, chaos or community. How do we get to community? Because clearly we have chaos.
Well, that one, Jesse, I think is an easy one. I think we work recognizing each other's common dignity. We work together recognizing that we ought to have the equal opportunity to and freedom to exercise those, our liberty to realize our greatest potential. And then thirdly, we understand that all happens in a environment of community or solidarity. So again, dignity, freedom, and liberty, and solidarity and community are the paths toward the world house and what King called the beloved community. It is the path of nonviolence.
I would agree with that. And I just want to add a little economic angle to it. I was looking at an amazing nighttime view from the tower at LaGuardia Airport. The sheer number of flights that come into LaGuardia Airport. And I went to YouTube and looked at the world economy from the tower vantage point of Jackson Hartsfield Airport. And then I went to, of course, my own airport, O'Hare Airport, at nighttime, watching literally one flight after the other. And I said to myself, not only is it beautiful, but in my opinion, it's reflective of the global economy, just the sheer number of planes that are landing. And now I'm saying to myself, Johnny, that if you live in a Black community or brown community somewhere in America, and you don't see that kind of activity in the sky above you, you're probably outside of the global economy. You're probably in some kind of commuter situation where you get up every morning, you're stuck in traffic, you're heading to work into the global economy. You look across the street to the other side of the same highway, and you can literally practically walk down the middle of it because no one is trying to get to where you live in the global scheme of things. And so we find ourselves trapped in these, as Dr. King would say, the barrios, the ghettos, and the trailer parks of our nation, because while we contribute to the global economy at 8 a.m. every morning in every direction of the nation, it doesn't mean that the global economy is necessarily coming to us. It is spiraling in pursuit of critical minerals and resources. And Dr. King once said that we are a nation that, tragically can spend billions of dollars to bomb a poor people on the other side of the world, but we can't seemingly find enough money right here for Medicaid, Medicare, to put 3 square meals on a man's table right here in America, and he called it shameful.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And so Jesse, it speaks to what the global economy really is, how it's organized, which is why King called for a restructuring of the edifice, including the economic edifice. Many don't realize that, I think that King had serious problems with our capitalist society, and particularly its focus on individualism and its acquisitive nature, that is the accumulation and concentration of resources, of individual effort at the expense of community effort. And so if the idea that the economy is going to come to us, no, it's not going to come to us. Our whole structure is designed for we, the people, like crabs in the barrel, to climb over each other, trying to get our share of the pie. I mixed metaphors there, Jesse, but I think you get the point.
Absolutely.
And so he's looking for a way to restructure how we understand the economic system and how we practice that system so that we individually can certainly realize our full potential, but not at the expense of others realizing theirs.
Johnny, just before I ask you for your word of hope, how can we support your work and your organization?
Well, the worldhouseproject.org is our website. The worldhouseproject.org is our website. There you can learn more about our work around the globe and including in your own community. And you can support our work by making a tax-deductible contribution to our work.
TheWorldHouse.org. Johnny, a word of hope.
Word of hope is that it rests with us, Jesse. We are the change, as Gandhi would say, that we are looking for. And then if we don't do it, Jesse, who will? If we're waiting on someone on a white horse, someone in shining armor to rescue us, he ain't coming. And it's just not going to happen. And the good Lord helps those who help themselves. And so if we don't take on this challenge, and our challenge has to be more, our work has to be more than simply protesting. We've got to do the hard work, as King said, of organizing and mobilizing and creating the kind of world that we want.
I've often said that God makes peaches. He does not make peach cobbler.
That's right.
He makes sweet potatoes, but he does not make sweet potato pie.
That's right.
A collard green is a weed until you add a ham hock to it. And then it takes on a quite a different life. God will not do for us what we can do for ourselves. Johnny, thank you for being on your program, World House with Johnny Mack.
Jesse, thank you for having me. It's just wonderful.
I look forward to talking with you again next week. This is Jesse Jackson Jr. I'd like to talk for a moment about what Johnny is trying to get us to see. That Dr. King gave thought even before resistance. And one could even say that the thought was prophetic, in that I can speak weekly with Johnny Mack about a reflection and a prediction that Martin Luther King Jr. could make about what is happening at this time in this space, in this country, and in this world. Now, I don't claim to have a crystal ball. I don't think any of us do. But if there ever were a crystal ball that were ever written, Johnny Mack's work is particularly important to that and important to us, because to take us back to the idea that we are going somewhere and that the American experiment is unlike any experiment in human history, where different people from different walks of life are really challenged as children of God to end up in the same place, in the same time, in the present and in the moment, in time, over time, and to try to work through humanity's most difficult questions in this hour. There is no experiment quite like the American experiment. And in my opinion, America is still, in spite of everything that we're seeing, it's still worth fighting for. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to World House on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show with Johnny Mack. More when we come forward with Jose Matthews.
1980 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. The man accused of threatening Black House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is in court today. Jeffries is responding.
We've seen crimes committed by people who Donald Trump pardoned on the first day he was sworn into office.
Chris Moynihan, who served time for the January 6th riot, allegedly texted plans to target Jeffries. Opening statements began in the trial of former Illinois deputy Sean Grayson, accused of murdering 36-year-old Sonia Massey, a black woman shot in her kitchen after calling 911 about a prowler. Prosecutors say the shooting was unjustified. Grayson claimed he feared she'd throw boiling water at him. And Pharrell Williams is set to perform before Game 1 of the World Series between the Dodgers and Blue Jays. Joined by gospel group Voices of Fire, he'll perform songs from his new album while they sing both national anthems. Game 1 is Friday night in Toronto at 8 p.m. Eastern. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's the World Series. These players live forever. Watch baseball at its finest. The World Series, presented by Capital One. Major League Baseball, trademarks and
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
2 days into the NBA regular season, the league is finding out that they may have a very serious problem with illegal gambling. When FBI Director Kash Patel speaks at a press conference, telling reporters that numerous people connected to the NBA are facing felony and racketeering charges, something is up. Patel announced Thursday morning that more than 30 people across the country have been arrested by the FBI after a year-long investigation. Among the arrests, Portland Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups and former NBA player and assistant coach Damon Jones. According to reports, one of the accusations against Jones is that he provided information to gamblers on LeBron James's injury status during the 2023-24 season. Jones allegedly tipped off people that LeBron would not be playing in certain games before he was listed on the Lakers pregame injury report. Much more to come on this situation. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Tavis Smiley with a final word here about the upcoming Left Coast Forum on Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. As you know by now, our major keynoters include Professor Richard Wolff and Dr. Cornel West. LA Mayor Karen Bass will be there as well. But listen to some of these plenaries: fighting for black students and educational equity, resilience under Trumpism, how to stay sane under fascism, the battle for democracy, what's at stake in 2026, healthcare under attack, fighting Trump's cuts, and building patient power from seed to system, building a local food economy in South LA, theater as a force for change, voices from Palestine. The Constitution is not self-reinforcing, racism on the left, building communities of care, federal changes and their impact on healthcare in LA County, Committee for the First Amendment, and more. The Left Coast Forum is brought to you by the LA Progressive, the Empowerment Congress, Community Coalition, Partnership for Growth LA, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, LA Care Health Plan, United Teachers Los Angeles, Black Progressive Action Coalition, St. John's Community Health, the National Lawyers Guild, the Weingart Foundation, and more. Space is limited, so if I were you, I'd register right now at KBLA1580.com. That's KBLA1580.com. Your voice matters. Your presence matters. We'll see you there.
Second hour on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest is worldwide. Hulsey Matthews is the founder of a firm and based in Johannesburg, South Africa. Hulsey has over 30 years experience in public and private sector. He's lived and worked in England and the United States, as well as across Africa. Early in his career, he was at Hill & Knowlton in New York and at American Express corporate headquarters, where he was the Director of State Government Affairs. He subsequently went to work in Washington, D.C., the public affairs group at the law firm Washington & Christian, where he represented governments and corporate clients. Hulsey, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and Worldwide with Hulsey Matthews.
Good evening from Johannesburg. I hope you're well in Chicago, and good evening to the viewers and the listeners.
Jose, I'm so glad that you're joining us. I know that you've been crisscrossing the earth and have taken a little bit of a hiatus on our program, but I'm so glad you're back. Jose, let me ask you a question. The No King's Day protests in the United States, while it may have been grounded here in the United States in light of what we are experiencing as a country, I understand that there were protests around the world. And they weren't just in solidarity with our protests here in the United States, but the idea of authoritarianism is on the rise in other parts of the world as well. And some people were protesting, a significant number of them were protesting their own governments. Jose, what's gotten into the water that has the entire world abandoning the idea of democracy and democratic reform?
Well, I think that there's a substantial backlash that's taking place to the notion of rule by diktat, and that democracy is merely a tool of convenience that is to be only adhered to under certain designated circumstances. So in the bigger context, the protests are an assertion of democratic rights, freedoms that people have come to expect, and that government is there to regulate and ensure that laws are observed and the Constitution is adhered to. However, what we've seen in certain instances is an attempt to bypass and circumvent the conventional norms that are associated with democratic institutions. And I think what's particularly interesting, as one who views it from a distance, is that many people around the world have always regarded, cliched as it may sound, that the United States is the beacon of democracy. And yet you're seeing what, if we were sitting in the United States and looking at it at a country in Southeast Asia, Myanmar, for example, any African state, what is taking place in terms of the utilization of the military. You know that in the 60s, 70s, we see a proliferation of military governments across Africa, and the subjugation of the normal rule of law and the Constitution and so on. So to actually see that there is a replication of that in the country which has been lauded for 250 years for the very, very fundamental rights associated with the Constitution of the United States. I think it's quite a it's a watershed moment, and I think that really no one knows which direction to look, but certainly people are sitting up and paying attention, because we also live in a world that's very connected, that's very aware of what's happening across the globe. So that's also making sure that the awareness levels from when, let's say, when we were so active politically with the great Reverend Jesse Jackson, there was no social media, there were no cell phones, there's no Facebook, there is no TikTok, there is no Instagram. Everything was really done by radio, television, not much cable network. It was just very much at the advent of the cable era. So it was it's a different period. And now information goes across the globe in an instant. And that's perhaps what we're seeing, is a reaction to that, because people are informed in a short space of time about what's happening in India, what's happening in Brazil, and or in the Soviet Union or in Russia. So it's changed and become more dramatic. What surprises, I think, people who are outside the United States is that change is taking place before their very eyes. I was laughing today because if somebody had said that, you know, the White House was going to have a new ballroom built and funds, but if we said that Kwame Nkrumah, the late Kwame Nkrumah, the great Kwame Nkrumah, was building a new airport using public funds in his home village, so that he could land that, and that did happen with Mobutu Sese Seko in his home village. He built a strip so that his aircraft could land there, and around the world there was universal condemnation of that. So it's interesting how that how that's taking place, and it's amusing in some respects, but it's also a good bad harbinger of things to come.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour is Hulsey Matthews. I'm really interested in how the rest of the world sees us. Sometimes we need an outside perspective to see ourselves. More when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
On Thursday evening, November 6th, you're invited to the next KBLA Talk 1580 Altadena Town Hall meeting. This time, we're convening at Victory Bible Church, 1497 North Hill Avenue in Pasadena. The town hall will once again be broadcast live on KBLA Talk 1580 from 4 to 6 p.m. on Thursday, November 6th. But you're invited to join us in person for this urgent and necessary community conversation. The theme for this Altadena Eaton Canyon Fire Town Hall is Understanding the Wildfire Recovery Compensation Fund. The primary focus of this gathering is to inform residents about Southern California Edison's newly launched Wildfire Recovery Compensation Program and provide clarity on eligibility and the claims process. There are plenty of questions to be asked, and only KBLA Talk 1580 has the right moderators to ask the tough questions, the right stakeholders and community activists to share their insights, and we have confirmed the participation of corporate executives from Southern California Edison to answer our queries. So be sure to join us at Victory Bible Church in Pasadena, 1497 North Hill Avenue on Thursday, November 6th. The event is free and open to the public, but registration is required at KBLA1580.com. That's KBLA1580.com. Light refreshments will be served immediately following the live town hall. This KBLA Talk 1580 Altadena Rising Town Hall is brought to you by Quinn Emanuel Trial Lawyers and the Black Freedom Fund.
Life moves fast. That's why California makes voting easy. You don't have to wait until Election Day. Drop your ballot at a secure drop box, visit an early vote center, or mail it. Over 80% of Californians vote early, and you can too. Plus, when you sign up for Where's My Ballot, you'll get a text or email the moment your ballot is received and counted. Don't delay, vote today. Get more information at sos.ca.gov. A message from the California Secretary of State.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Charmin Ultra Strong. You can use less, better than the rest. Charmin Ultra Strong. Your booty past the clean test. Salmon weave texture, it's the best. Study up, teach a lesson on fresh. Your booty past the clean test. Yes, sir. Charmin Ultra Strong.
Charmin Ultra Strong with diamond weave texture cleans better than the leading one-ply brand, so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour is Hulsey Matthews. Hulsey in 2021 was appointed by the National Assembly of South Africa as a counselor on the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, which regulates the technology and broadcasting industry in South Africa. Hulsey also served as the Group Chief Executive of the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. Hulsey, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.
It's always a pleasure. Hulsey, let me ask you this question, consistent with our earlier initial conversation, and that is how the rest of the world sees us. when we see the power of the U.S. military in off the coast of Venezuela and in the Caribbean, shooting these little skiffs, which Pete Hegseth declassifies very quickly for the exploitation of showing American power, resolve, and will. And I'd hate to say that it's really American power, resources, and resolve, because this is an activity that is not authorized by the Congress of the United States. And even our bombing of the Iranian regime to denuclearize their efforts to gain or to develop a nuclear weapon, not authorized by the Congress of the United States. The rest of the world has to be in some kind of fear that they could be on the receiving end of gunboat diplomacy. Now, that's a term, OC, we haven't used since Ronald Reagan, where peaceable means of communicating through diplomacy are essentially being wiped aside or ignored or completely eliminated in exchange or for the idea of the strong man, the strong military, the Department of War. And it's the poorest of the poor around the world who are the recipients of this new American foreign policy.
Well, I think it raises a number of interesting questions as whether, this is an attempt for hegemonic power on the part of the United States. And it's something that hasn't been seen in the modern era. Obviously, in the Reagan era, Gerald Ford, you saw certain activity taking place, but it was never quite so open and in a sense flamboyant. This flamboyant display, the summoning of the military from all over the world to be given a lecture by a guy who never went above the rank of major, if I'm not mistaken, and told how they must shape up. These things have started to, I think, send a message that the United States has changed, and it's a big shift. Let's say from the first term of the first Trump administration, Trump 1.0, I guess it's sometimes referred to, where there was a much more attempt to be isolationist, but there were certain engagements, North Korea and others, to try to create a particular persona around the current president, then president. And now you're seeing a greater flexing of and more in your face utilization of power and military power, which has never been, perhaps not so much as since the Vietnam War. And I think it raises a number of concerns on the part of countries globally, and it certainly makes countries, whether they're fearful of the United States for different reasons, whether they become a subject of that, suddenly I don't like you, the policy may change. And the uncertainty, and we've talked about this with Professor De Silva on a few previous occasions, but I think that we're entering a period of global uncertainty, and unfortunately the US is at the forefront of that. And that, I think, is what's worrying, where the US had been, widely seen as the leader globally, particularly in terms of Western democracies. But now you're seeing a marked shift in relation to the perceptions around that. Now, there are those who may welcome it and say it's needed, but I think that those would be in the minority. And then to your point, the War Powers Act is very clear. You are in Congress. You're in Congress for 17 years. You're very, very much aware of the relation between the executive branch, the legislative, around declarations of war and using military force. Yes, the president can; he's the commander in chief, but there are certain situations which call for consultation, and I think perhaps what's concerning is that the Republicans are very quiet, where normally they'd be very, very boisterous, but they're very quiet.
Jose, it's also the absence of the soft power, which you and I were very familiar with. The shuttering of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. That 1% of the nation's budget that fed people around the world, the poorest of the poor, and now starvation is on the rise. The shuttering of the National Institute for Health and the CDC, which vaccinated people around the world and had early warning signals for various diseases that could come to the United States and create global pandemics, epidemics around the world. The United States, with this new kind of strongman gunboat diplomacy, critical resources obsession, bartering, trade, emphasis, seems to have lost its interest in global human development in support of the expansion of an empire in ways that certainly no one would have ever verbalized publicly. Joe Biden certainly didn't do it. He talked about our allies. He worked to keep NATO together, but it seems he believed in AFRICOM. Obama was a significant part of AFRICOM, and there's talk about closing down the Africa Command if it hasn't already been shuttered. It just seems, Jose, that not only are we becoming a bully in the world, which is reflective of the president's personality, but we're also less interested in humanity in this process.
No, without question, and it's certainly a marked shift on the part of the an unexpected shift on the part of the United States, because even as recently as George Bush, the George Bush presidency, the son, he was very much supportive of the efforts of the United States with regards to vaccines for AIDS and HIV, particularly across the continent. Yes, and not a great deal is said about that, because he was openly supportive of exactly that utilization of soft power to drive the interests of the United States in that way, but also the war with Iraq. So it seems like the U.S. has pulled away from being a leader insofar as humanitarian objectives are concerned, and is moving much more towards a more authoritarian posture to drive its engagement with the rest of the world, and a very, very open display of that power, and one can even break it down to the language that comes across in specific forums, meetings with other world leaders, or just remarks that are delivered. And so it appears that that what is taking place is very much a reshaping of how America wants to appear to the rest of the world. Or I don't want to say America, because it's not the entire America, but let's say the government. What it is now projecting is what would be called, the Germans have some very interesting terminology, but Machtpolitik, which is the assertion of your power, the demonstration of your power, and how it is used, so that it suggests that you'd be prepared, to go forward. So it is it's a very it's a challenging time, and us as observers are quite curious about what will happen next.
Jose, I think in this moment, as I listen to you, that if we dig a little bit deeper, the big losers here are the poor, global poor, but also more specifically, so much of the progress that women have made globally is largely because the United States, through the United Nations and through many of these programs, we have contingented much of our aid, much of our diplomacy around the idea of equality of women in countries that historically ignored movements for equality for women. There have been a number of women who have gotten, as you well know, the Nobel Peace Prize for standing up for women in education, from Afghanistan to some sub-Saharan African countries to South America and wherever women find themselves in these communities. So I don't like speaking about humanity in terms of winners and losers, but women and poor children around the world are greatly affected by this new round of diplomacy and the absence of American leadership and goodwill throughout the world.
Oh, without a doubt, I think that's very true, and anyone who I think attempts to speak on behalf of what we can term, use your term, humanitarian issues or the advancement of humanitarian objectives is derided. And it's almost as if they're going to be put in stocks and they're going to throw rotten vegetables at them because what they're saying is so against the grain. And it's somewhat confusing because it flies in the face of what the United States stands for. Give me you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor. It really does not gel with what the United States stands for, represents, and how it has been viewed historically, globally. Yes, there are people who don't like it for a variety of reasons. That's never been. I think that's never been disguised. But now I think that there's open. It's more open, more obvious that there is a disaffection with the projection of American influence and power, where before people understood it. Now I think people probably would start to resent it, and also how humanitarian causes are falling by the wayside.
Can I comment in these final 2 minutes before we come forward and to our break? I am particularly unnerved by the use of the Central Intelligence Agency in South America that seems to be engaged in an activity that impacts the internal affairs of foreign nations. The president's willingness to do that ought to be scaring the hell out of every leader on earth that doesn't capitulate to the dictator's will. Is there some sense, in your opinion, that leaders around the world are concerned about this kind of overreach and engagement in their domestic affairs?
I'm certain that there must be, but at the same time, let's not. I think we should not assume that the CIA has been a benign organization around the world. And if you go back to Patrice Lumumba and other situations where the CIA was involved, so it's nothing new. What is new, I think, is that it's been spoken about openly in such an open manner. That's never been done before.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to Worldwide, our special edition with Jose Matthews. I think it's important that we have a perspective from around the world to hear the tone, the tenor, how the world feels about us from the outside. If you got up in the morning and didn't brush your teeth, and someone walked up to you and said, "Hey, let me give you a little advice, bro. How about a little Listerine?" We need to hear from other people sometimes that maybe everything you think is all right ain't all right. If you've got something, little debris hanging out of your nose, it wouldn't hurt to have a friend to say, "Man, listen, you need to go see yourself in the bathroom, in the mirror for a second." And so I'm grateful that Jose's giving us a sobering moment of how the rest of the world sees us on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More with Jose Matthews when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Former President Barack Obama is urging Californians to back Proposition 50, which would let lawmakers draw new district maps instead of an independent commission.
Our current president and his administration is explicitly saying that we want to change the rules of the game midstream in order to insulate ourselves from the people's judgment.
He and Governor Gavin Newsom say it's needed to fight President Trump's influence in the 2026 midterms. North Carolina lawmakers approved new congressional maps in a 66-48 party line vote. The GOP-drawn plan targets Democrat Don Davis in majority-black eastern North Carolina. And a Fulton County, Georgia judge has ordered a Buckhead Homeowners Association to maintain the historic Piney Grove Cemetery, where over 300 Black people have been buried since 1820. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's the World Series. These players live forever. Watch baseball at its finest. The World Series, presented by Capital One. Major League Baseball, trademarks and inclusion.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
2 days into the NBA regular season, the league is finding out that they may have a very serious problem with illegal gambling. When FBI Director Kash Patel speaks at a press conference, telling reporters that numerous people connected to the NBA are facing felony and racketeering charges, something is up. Patel announced Thursday morning that more than 30 people across the country have been arrested by the FBI after a year-long investigation. Among the arrests, Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups and former NBA player and assistant coach Damon Jones. According to reports, one of the accusations against Jones is that he provided information to gamblers on LeBron James's injury status during the 2023-24 season. Jones allegedly tipped off people that LeBron would not be playing in certain games before he was listed on the Lakers pregame injury report. Much more to come on this situation. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hollywood swingers.
Megan Good, Michael Hyatt, Golden Brooks, Ty Burrell, Christine Devine. They're all coming together on Saturday, November 1st at Paramount Picture Studios for the Kids Film Awards, a red carpet celebration of young filmmakers from right here in Los Angeles. Presented by Kids in the Spotlight. The Kids Film Awards showcase original short films written, cast, and performed by local youth. Powerful stories across every genre, from drama and comedy to action and suspense. It's a night that blends Hollywood energy with real community spirit, highlighting the future voices of film. These are the next generation of storytellers stepping onto one of Hollywood's biggest stages. Come out and experience a night filled with film, music, and inspiration, where creativity, community, and purpose meet. Tickets are available now at kitsinc.org. That's KITSINC.org. The 2025 Kids Film Awards, Saturday, November 1st at Paramount Picture Studios. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Donald Trump has all but declared war on California, sending in the National Guard, blocking disaster relief, and cutting funds to our colleges. And now, he and Texas Republicans are trying to rig the next election by stealing congressional seats from Black voters in states like Texas.
They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides.
Seriously, look it up. But Prop 50 is how we fight back. It gives Californians the power to fight fire with fire and beat Trump at his own game. Prop 50 creates temporary emergency congressional maps that level the playing field and protect the power of Black votes. Not just in California, but across the country. Your vote matters, and the whole country is counting on California to lead. So use your vote to protect our power, our history, and our future. Vote yes on Prop 50 by November 4. Ad paid for by Yes on 50, the Election Rigging Response Act, Governor Newsom's Ballot Measure Committee, Ad Committee's top funders, HMP for Prop 50, and Fund for Policy Reform.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. In this hour and the remaining half an hour, Jose Matthews was appointed by the National Assembly of South Africa as a counselor on the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, which regulates technology and broadcasting industry in South Africa. But I must have met Jose in between 1984 and 1988 in the midst of Jesse Jackson, my father's runs for president of the United States. And I was reflecting the other day with Abby Phillip, who has a new book called Jesse Jackson, the Black Political Power Movement, that she is now selling and doing a great job, by the way. And I shared with them one of the things, Jose, that brought Dad to prominent political significance, obviously, was the 84 and 88 campaign. But in 1979, 1980, when Reagan was running for president, he would not commit to extending the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Of course, he did by 1982. Enough heat was brought on him. We took William Bradford Reynolds down to Mississippi and Alabama and showed him the evidence of how African Americans under Section 5 were still being discriminated against. And Section 5, as you know, those jurisdictions had to seek pre-clearance from the Justice Department before they could hold elections and agree to certain congressional districts and maps. And here we are now, just a week ago, listening to the Robinson versus Calais decision, which is the decision that now threatens to gut Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, the creation of majority-minority districts. We've seen what's taken place in Texas. We're now watching what's taking place with the Democrats in California. Proposition 50, I think it is, Proposition 50. President Barack Obama has now weighed in with Gavin Newsom in support of doing everything they can and encouraging other Democratic governors to do everything they can to keep Donald Trump from having a power grab. I say all of that to say that Jose Matthews, while he may be in Johannesburg, South Africa, he worked for 2 decades here in the United States with the civil rights community, with Jesse Jackson on national presidential campaigns, and is knee-deep in an understanding of what we are fighting right here in the United States and the significance of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. With that said, Jose, I am profoundly concerned that we could be looking at the elimination of a dozen, maybe 24 African American representatives in the Congress of the United States in the last election. And while we are allied and showing our allegiance to the Democratic Party, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was designed to hold Democrats and Republicans accountable, because whenever they get together in a state legislature, they always divide up the states amongst themselves without ever giving consideration to our representation. Oh, see, these are difficult times for Black political representation at the federal and state level as well.
Oh, there's no question. And I think if I, maybe perhaps try to illustrate the point, when you think of what Reverend Jackson, Dr. King, so many others, what they fought for the Voting Rights Act, for the vote, for the rights of African Americans, and the rights really that then filter down to the rest. It's almost like asking Nelson, well, you spent 27 years in jail to fight for freedom and the Constitution, and someone comes along and just says, gone, forget it. No such thing. No longer Constitution, no longer the base for the Freedom Charter. There's going to be a new way of doing things. And this is the way we're going to do those things. So a complete erosion of rights and civil rights and rights taken for granted, that vote, that one vote that you have is being removed. And that's the clearest example or clearest analogy that I can make, that it would be akin to what Walter Sisulu, Governor Mbeki, Albert Lutuli, Oliver Tambo, and all the other great leaders stood for. And so if we move across to the United States, John Lewis, Emmett Till, Rosa Parks, and many others. And of course, the fight in South Africa was not just purely, the African majority. There were many, many close comrades, as they're referred to in South Africa.
Jose, let me add to that if there is no Congressional Black Caucus, then there's no Rondellums. And if there's no Rondellums in Congress and John Conyers in Congress, apartheid in South Africa lasts even longer. That Mandela is not freed in the early 90s without the Congressional Black Caucus and the sanctions movement and the historically Black colleges and universities and progressive activists at Harvard and at college campuses around our country demanding that their colleges and universities disinvest and divest from South Africa, the divestment movement. If we don't have that activity in the United States, there is no democratic constitution in South Africa. And in fact, Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, they rot in jail for the rest of their lives because Reagan wasn't going to do anything about it.
No, we were there.
Yeah,
we were there when that comprehensive anti-apartheid bill was signed, led by Congressman Dellums, Congressman Mickey Leland, Assemblywoman Maxine Waters, now Congressman Waters, Willie Brown led the divestment campaign in California, Speaker Brown, and many others, Congressman Donald Payne, who were at the forefront of that. And so no
Mickey Leland, 1 million Ethiopians die every month without Mickey Leland and the hunger programs in that country.
And died actually for that, in that situation. In the plane crash in Ethiopia, addressing that problem, to your earlier point about the humanitarian aspect of UN foreign policy that was in large measure driven from the Congress and by the Congressional Black Caucus, particularly with the focus on Africa and the diaspora in particular. So Congressman Ed Towns, many, Mayor Dinkins, who are very, very instrumental in making sure that apartheid was given visibility in the United States. And so if you don't have those people, if you don't have the Congressional Black Caucus, then the implications are very, very serious. And so the redistricting, the rewriting of congressional, the gerrymandering that is taking place has tremendous implications that go even beyond the Voting Rights Act, and will, could undo what has been done since the 1950s, when Rosa Parks refused to get up and give way. So you actually have a regression, policies that are regressive, that are going to take the the United States further back. And we could not, if we could see, use a comparison in South Africa, if we could go back to that period, it would undo tremendous amounts of work, sacrifices by huge numbers.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Hulsey Matthews on Worldwide with Hulsey Matthews on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Hulsey when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Life moves fast. That's why California makes voting easy. You don't have to wait until Election Day. Drop your ballot at a secure drop box, visit an early vote center, or mail it. Over 80% of Californians vote early, and you can too. Plus, when you sign up for Where's My Ballot, you'll get a text or email the moment your ballot is received and counted. Don't delay, vote today. Get more information at sos.ca.gov. A message from the California Secretary of State.
The Black Hollywood Education and Resource Center proudly presents its 27th annual Real Black Men Short Film Showcase. Join us Saturday, October 25th at the Writers Guild Theater, 135 South Doheny Drive in Beverly Hills, California. The showcase will feature over 20 films by emerging Black male filmmakers from across the country, ready to let their stories be seen, voices be heard, and visions come to life. Saturday, October 25th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Tickets are on sale now on eventbrite.com. For more information, call 323-957-4656 or email bherc@bherc.org.
Donald Trump has all but declared war on California, sending in a National Guard, blocking disaster relief, and cutting funds to our colleges. And now, he and Texas Republicans are trying to rig the next election by stealing congressional seats from Black voters in states like Texas.
They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides.
Seriously, look it up. But Prop 50 is how we fight back. It gives Californians the power to fight fire with fire and beat Trump at his own game. Prop 50 creates temporary emergency congressional maps that level the playing field and protect the power of Black votes. Not just in California, but across the country. Your vote matters, and the whole country is counting on California to lead. So use your vote to protect our power, our history, and our future. Vote yes on Prop 50 by November 4th. Ad paid for by Yes on 50, the Election Rigging Response Act, Governor Newsom's Ballot Measure Committee, Ad Committee's top funders, HMP for Prop 50, and Fund for Policy Reform.
Is reviewing life insurance on your to-do list? Now's the perfect time to add it. A friend recently told me that securing life insurance sooner rather than later can help you lock in lower rates for years to come. So I bumped this up on my list and got it done. I called SelectQuote and couldn't believe how easy and affordable life insurance is. I'm 40 and got a $500,000 policy for $16 a month. My husband's also 40 and his $500,000 policy was only $18 a month. Plus, with SelectQuote's same-day coverage, there was no medical exam required and we were covered by the time we hung up. Knowing I have this checked off my list feels amazing, but the peace of mind knowing my family is protected feels even better.
Call SelectQuote at 1-800-729-7070. That's 1-800-729-7070. Or go to SelectQuote.com to get your free quote today. That's 1-800-729-7070. Details on example rate at SelectQuote.com.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Coverage varies by plan. View contracts and exclusions at endurancewarranty.com. If you have a 2004 or newer vehicle that's out of warranty or about to be, Endurance is urgently notifying U.S. drivers about their low-cost vehicle coverage plan designed to save drivers thousands on rising vehicle repair costs. Those who qualify can pick their plan, coverage, and repair shop. Roadside service, towing, and rental cars included. All covered repairs get paid directly to the repair shop for you. Call now for your free quote. Call 800-373-7519. That's 800-373-7519.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show in our final segment of Worldwide with our special edition and special guest, Jose Matthews. Jose, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and to your regular contribution to that show.
Thank you so much, and it's really been a pleasure being here with you this evening.
Jose, I have to leave you about 3 minutes for a word of hope towards the end, but I do want to ask you this question. There is a rising left movement in the United States. You saw some of it on No King's Day. 7 million people showed up to protest. Maybe loosely associated with that, probably politically directly associated with it, but no one claims leadership of the No Kings movement. You've got the consistent emergence of Bernie Sanders. You have the mayoral primary in New York, a city that you used to live in and work in, and the debate last night between Cuomo and Zoran Mondani, as well as the former head of the Guardian Angels, Mr. Sliwal, I guess his name is. And you have AOC, a particularly popular figure in American politics at this hour. And I'm wondering how the left and the movement of the left in the United States is being perceived around the world before we get to your word of hope.
I think that there's some degree of disappointment and confusion, and there does not really appear to be any leadership that has come forward, and I think it opens up a larger question that at this point the Democratic Party really is somewhat rudderless, and until someone emerges, we'll remember the 88 campaign, the 84 campaign, the 92 campaign, the emergence of Bill Clinton, the Southern Strategy, the DLC, as we used to call leisure class.
I think we're having a little bit of a technical issue with Jose Matthews. I'm sure he'll come back
That
in.
is there's no unifying force to really project leadership and project a clearly articulate, very, very clear alternative. And I think that the left has now become so marginalized, and perhaps it's been also the relentless attacks on the part of the right wing or the aspects of the Republican Party. You'll know, I remember you used to tell me about the cordiality that existed when you first went to Congress, and how you related to other Republicans and the relationships that you built across the aisle. And I don't think that bipartisanship is present. It's a far more toxic environment from what I saw and heard and speaking to colleagues and former colleagues. There's a sense that no one trusts anybody or willing to work and together, and until I think that that leadership emerges, this may likely continue. And of course, the onslaught. Let's I think tell it like it is. They are they have become very, very clear at how they're articulating a message, notwithstanding that it's negative, but it's their message. They're very, very, they're very, very, very hardcore in the way in which they present it, and even the blaming of the shutdown, the Schumer shutdown. These messages and the tone of it. So it's right now. One doesn't get a sense that there's light at the end of the tunnel for the left, for the larger Democratic Party. And I think coming up that we are now 12 months away from the midterm elections. That's something that needs to be corrected.
If we fall short, as you give some thought to your word of hope, if we fall short in the midterm elections, I'm not so sure that the Republic can survive 3 more years of this. I just think the spirit energy would be so devastated if the American people don't show up. Jose, a word of hope.
Oh, I think that through the darkest times, if there's anything that we've learned, and from the people that you and I have been fortunate to be around, to be influenced, to listen to, we were lucky, fortunate in that we lived in the age of Jesse Jackson, the age of Nelson Mandela. We were fortunate that those icons were able to take their struggles, their suffering, their endurance forward, and their unwavering commitment to the emancipation and the rights of their respective peoples. And there are many others. I use those names because those are the names that are familiar, but there are many others whose names are not known, who are similarly committed to that emancipation and that relentless effort and struggle for rights, for democracy, for freedom, and for the power of one man or one woman, one vote. Let's always keep that at the forefront of our minds, and it's something that we should never ever lose sight of. Thanks for the opportunity, and it's been great being with you.
Jose, we appreciate your contribution. Thank you for being on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This has been a special edition of Worldwide with Jose Matthews. Jose, I can't wait for you to return next time.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you.
I want to say that that the outside perspective does matter. That America has stood as a beacon of hope, a beacon of light for struggling people, oppressed people throughout the world. And it is in no large measure because African Americans in this country have led movements for social change and for social justice that has inspired people beyond our shores. Nelson Mandela used to talk about reading and studying Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X and Gandhi while he was in prison. Other political dissidents around the world have studied our movements for social change and social justice. It's not just your neighbors that are looking at us and the activity that we take. It is people all around the world who gain inspiration from our courage, from the next steps, the next actions that we take. And we don't believe that the ends justify the means. We are not prepared to engage in that kind of activity, but we do believe that we give thought to it. The ends that we seek are pre-existent in the means. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Until tomorrow, Wealthy Wednesdays was great, but I can't wait to speak to Gina Towns tomorrow on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. More with Jesse Jackson Jr.
KBLA 1580 Santa